This is Will Stewart from OnlineChessLessons.net, taking a look at a game from the 2012 Biel Blitz tournament, and there was Chinese superstar Wang Hao with the white pieces against former female world chess champion Alexandra Kosteniuk playing black, who was especially dangerous in Blitz. So Wang Hao starts with standard stuff, d4, c4, and here Kosteniuk with bishop b4. This is the Nimzo-Indian. And so now e3, pretty classical line in the Nimzo. White is going for development, maybe central pawn mass. And with c5, black is trying to actively attack that. Knight f3. Again, nothing crazy. This is all regular theory. d5, black's trying to make a big stand in the center. And so knight c6, black's got good development. Looks like he's going to give up his dark square bishop, but he's got good play in the center. So a3, definitely, now black is definitely going to have to give up that bishop. And so we go into a very theoretical line. Rook e8, I guess there's a few moves here. I think you can take immediately and play queen c7. I don't see anything wrong with rook e8. Seems just fine, maybe preparing e5 in the future. And so a4, so white is getting ready to develop the bishop, put it on a nice diagonal. So rook e8 really made sense, to get out of the way of that. A couple of exchanges here, and queen to c7. So you see this kind of pressure. I guess it's pretty frequent in the Nimzo, and also kind of similar pressure in the Grunfeld, although black would have a fianchetto on the king side. But just the idea that white has got a lot of pawns in the center, and black is just trying to put pressure on it. Maybe going to play e5 in the future, or sometimes black plays like b6 and gets a fianchetto going. So in this game, Kosteniuk, white, Wang Hao is playing pretty quickly now with bishop a3. Bishop on c4 is a little loose, but not really a good way to capitalize on it yet. So now b6, and this, if we see a few exchanges, this is probably not going to work. I think that white is going to be dropping a little piece, something of the sort here. So don't get too greedy with a bunch of loose pieces, right? So queen e2, maybe now white could try to take the piece, although I don't think so. Take the pawn. So knight a5 here by Kosteniuk. She could also continue, I believe, e5 looks okay. Bishop b7 as well. I just don't think this works. Knight a5, there's too many loose pieces. So anyway, those are kind of some typical ideas to play e5 or bishop b7. Black does need to move pretty quick because white with queen e2 is probably getting ready to play e4. Then we're going to have all kind of nasty stuff with e5 or d5 threat. So knight a5, this is definitely a forcing move. Bishop d3, aiming at the king. And c4. So c4 is kind of controversial because now black is committing himself, or herself, in that she's really reducing her pressure on the center. Now there's no more pressure on d4, so white doesn't really have to worry about defending that anymore. I mean, this pawn on c3 is fixed, but also the pawn being fixed on c3, if black can get jamming real quick on that, maybe that can be a distraction. And so in the game, Kosteniuk plays knight to b3, and this is pretty interesting. I mean, if captures, now pressure on the c3 pawn, maybe knight to e4 coming. If you provoke, for example, let's say c4, this bishop a6 is awfully convenient developing move. So compensation, we could definitely say. So instead, Wang Hao plays rook to b1, and this does kind of cut off your a4 pawn. But the a4 pawn maybe is not going to be so important if white can succeed in going after the black king. So rook b1 is threatening to win a pawn cleanly there. Knight to d5, some nice activity by black. And I'm always looking to sack stuff. This just doesn't work in this situation. Probably this knight being able to come back to f6. It's not going to work, but it's worth looking at. So knight d5, we see some nice pressure. and queen to e1. Kind of a goofy way of defending the pawn, but e4 is going to come with some force here. Bishop to d7, trying to scoop a pawn. e4 pushes back. Knight f4 is definitely pretty active. You know, I see black has got some very nice activity. Now g3, and the knight's got to go back. This would be pretty sketchy. I mean, maybe you can get away with this, but you know, you're going to be giving away a pawn at least. So knight g6, now h4. So at this point, I think it's been pretty nice play by both sides. h6, and knight to f8 with the idea of coming back in the game via h7. So I think it's been pretty nice. You know, black has definitely achieved some counterplay. Knight on b3 is very annoying. Pawn on a4 is going to drop. However, white does have a strong center and just gained some time pushing black's knight back. Queen e3, knight h7. It'd be nice to get to f6 so that after e5, let's just give an example. Let's say white makes a move, knight f6, e5. You know, getting the knight to d5. This would be a nice square, notwithstanding the mate threats. Just kind of the idea. So anyway, that's, you know, if the knight could make it to f6, it would be nice. But e5 by Wang Hao immediately, and so this does keep the knight out of the game. Now we can get a white piece, either the knight or the bishop, whatever, something occupying e4, and also now this bishop can come into d6. So here bishop c6, and if bishop d6 immediately, probably queen to b7. And now a4 is still going to hang. And now also this battery here is looking pretty unpleasant for white. It's definitely some counterplay there for black. So instead, Wang Hao plays knight h4, getting ready to roll the f-pawn. Now bishop b7, so kind of a time-consuming maneuver by black, but you know, setting up the bishop and queen on this diagonal is going to be pretty good. So now Hao continues bishop d6. Maybe not the best time to play bishop d6. I don't know if that was. I mean, this is a blitz game. I don't want to be too hard on the guys. Just maybe just wasn't the best time because it moves black's queen to c6 where it definitely wants to hang out and make some mate threats. So probably better just directly king to h2 or f4. And so king h2, so now both the mates are defended for the time being, but you know, having mate in one's hanging, especially in a blitz game, is not fun. Knight g5, the knight is active. And so now, you know, I suppose f4 could be an idea, but again, we still have a lot of weaknesses. Maybe knight to e4. This looks pretty good. I mean, the knight on e4 kicking this guy. Maybe f5 is coming. There's a lot of crazy stuff going on here. So instead, Wang Hao just f3. Let's take it easy. Close this down and block this knight out. Now a6, prepping to consolidate. And f4. So now that white prevents knight to e4, he swings the rook over. And so this is fine. Knight h7, and here I think it's roughly balanced. I mean, white has got a pretty nice bishop on d6, but black has got mate threats all day on this diagonal. So, but you know, if white tries to go too crazy and trade it off, trade pieces, black will also have some counterplay on the queen side, although it's tough to get it past this bishop. You know, so I think I would prefer white because white's attacking potential and the fact that white's queenside or black's queenside pawns, it's very difficult to get them rolling past this bishop's blockade on the dark squares. That being said, this is a blitz game, right? So this is, you know, anything can happen. Wang Hao felt that he had consolidated sufficiently and he played f5. Maybe one better move, you know, after, let's say, f4, instead of playing f5 immediately, maybe just like rook f2 or rook e2, just doubling rooks. I think doubling rooks and then playing it, maybe it's going to have a little more effect. pawn takes, and so knight takes was played. Let's look at the alternatives here. First of all, now that the e-file is open with this x-ray against white's queen, the e-pawn is pinned. So if we do something like rook takes, you really got to start factoring in some tactics. You know, maybe this isn't working quite yet, but that's on the table. You know, so once this move is played, you need to watch out for some tactics. Second of all, what's up? White would like to really close down the diagonal and trying to play d5. And, you know, white has a really just a killer attack starting to build up. You know, for example, let's say if rook takes. I was thinking, well, a natural move would be knight to g5, and maybe you can just go ahead and sacrifice. Maybe we can just sack it up. I mean, the whole thing is sketchy. There's tactics all over the place, like queen takes. Now we're looking at mate threats and stuff. I mean, this is nuts. But anyway, I mean, this is what maybe could have happened. And I think it would have been double-edged. I think white maybe had a slight edge, but there's definitely chances for both sides. Probably not knight g5, I guess. Maybe you're going to have to come back to rook over here, to d8. It's going to be tough to defend for black, but white is always, at least for the time being, he's got to worry about getting mated. That's very easy to forget about when the clock is ticking. So in the game, Wang Hao blundered. He played knight takes f5. And so this allowed queen g2 mate. It was a pretty good upset. I mean, Kosteniuk was rated about 24-something, 24-20, 24-50. I think Wang Hao is like 27-30. You know, definitely in the world elite. So it was a nice game. You know, I mean, Kosteniuk played very energetically in the opening, very creatively. And a lot of people will say, like, well, she didn't really win here because he messed up and she didn't win and stuff like that. And that's a bunch of BS because, you know, she made a good amount of threats in this game. And, you know, she was probably playing quickly. He was probably low on time. And he made a mistake and she capitalized. So, you know, she won the game fair and square. So it was definitely well done. So this is Will Stewart from OnlineChessLessons.net. And thanks for tuning in.